We're looking at here in Australia at a pretty good result in fighting COVID-19, but the debate is on how you open up, and it comes down to the vaccines and their effectiveness. Now, all vaccines aren't created equal, are they?
That's true. Thank you for having me. The data that's coming out of Public Health England is making clear that there's a large disparity that while for the Indian variant B16772, Pfizer has around 88% efficacy with 2 doses. It is about only 60% with the AstraZeneca 2 doses. And if you drop down to 1 dose, it's about 50% with the Pfizer, but only 33% for symptomatic the Indian variant with AstraZeneca. And so that's quite a bit of a drop. And obviously that's just symptomatic. We're also missing the asymptomatic part, which tends to be even lower. And so the question is, these vaccines, they protect you from severe disease. That's true. But is that enough to slow the transmission? And again, to many people who are not vaccinated, is that enough? I'm not quite sure. And I'm very worried because we're seeing surges in the UK, including in hospitals.
Indeed. Now, we live in a very different scenario here in Australia, but the debate and the question of whether we can open up to the rest of the world relies on this research. What does the research say about the effectiveness of these vaccines against transmission?
Yeah, so with transmission, not severe disease, but it's transmission. Transmission is comprised of both symptomatic, so mild illnesses help transmit, as well as asymptomatic, which we think is anywhere from 30 to 50% of all transmission. And that we don't know the exact data, but we know that it's usually the efficacy is much lower for asymptomatic. So if symptomatic is already 33% and 60% with 1 dose, 2 dose AstraZeneca, asymptomatic might be lower. And the key thing is vaccines alone, bottom line, are important, but vaccines alone cannot do the job of stopping this pandemic alone. We still need masks, we still need testing, contact tracing, quarantine, and we still need border quarantines and mass testing for anyone entering the country, as well as the quarantine itself. So altogether, we need a multi-dimensional, multi-layer Swiss cheese approach, because no single approach is foolproof. We need them all in order to contain it, especially when majority of the population has not been vaccinated yet.
Doctor, we've only seen, and every death is shocking, of course, but we've seen less than 1,000 deaths from COVID here in Australia. We have kept our borders closed for more than a year now. What is the reality of living with the disease in the medium and long term?
Well, I think in the short term, everyone's been very jealous of what's happening in Australia and New Zealand because of your zero COVID approach, albeit done at the provincial level in Australia. But long term, obviously, we need to travel. Tourism income is important to countless businesses. Businesses do need to reopen. So I think it's a combination of we need all these mitigation measures. We don't want lockdown if possible. We want to avoid that. I don't think anyone's a fan of lockdown. And we need better infrastructure, such as ventilation and air disinfection. Air disinfection meaning air HEPA filters, UV devices that are CDC recommended. These can allow our businesses to stay open, allow us to keep indoor transmission, which is airborne transmission where it's most common, minimized, and add on a layer of masks as well as vaccination. Hopefully we can keep this under control and have our borders open. But until then, until we have our vaccinations a little bit higher and the compliance and air ventilation, air mitigation, HEPA filters installed, it's sometimes still very risky.
What is the herd immunity rate?
Can keep our business open.
What is the herd immunity rate for COVID? What percentage of the population?
So that number changes depending on the infectiousness. The herd immunity it depends on what is the R naught originally, but we don't see that anymore. Originally, we think the Wuhan strain was around 4. Some people say 5, but 4 would mean we need 70, 75%. But this new strain, which is faster than even the UK strain, which was already much 50% faster, this one is still debated, but we think that this is 2 times faster, at least, than the original strain. That means we need potentially 85% 50% or higher to have reliable herd immunity. And many countries obviously are not there yet, not even by one shot. There's no country, even with one shot approach, has reached 85%. So I think we still have quite a ways to go. And this is where, in certain ways, I don't want to cherry pick vaccines too much, because any vaccine is much better than 0% protection. So I would rather take 50, 60% efficacy vaccine than nothing at all, especially when these vaccines have 100%, near 100% efficacy for severe disease. So vaccines, don't cherry pick right now. The world, very small fraction of the world is vaccinated. But if we all get there, and we all get there, hopefully, I think 70, 80% will be enough to ensure that we do not see any more surges.